So we will be starting from where we left. This is part 5. So we already discussed this. Secondary succession is when a previously present species is destroyed, and now we will again have a pioneer species, an intermediate species, and a climax community. These are the average time ranges that it takes for it to develop. Next we move on to ecological succession. There is two type: primary, secondary. Starts on bare rock, soil must be formed before, would occur after lava cools. Pioneer species include legends and moss snow, previous life works world after a glacier retreats. Results in climax community, shrubs and small trees grow, occurs over a long period of time. Both of them occur over a long period of time, relatively. Soil is already present, would occur after a forest fire. Grasses are the first plants to grow, occurs in areas where organisms lived previously, would occur after land is cleared by humans. Ecological succession. Net productivity per year. Pioneer community. Each year the productivity keeps rising for the pioneer community. Then it reaches climax, after which it will slowly decrease. Next we have ecological succession. There is autogenic succession, which means brought about by living inhabitants of that community itself. Allogenic means outside forces. Autotrophic means succession in which initially the green plants dominate. Heterotrophic structure in which initially heterotrophic dominates. So there are four types which we have read in this page. We will go by it again. Autogenic means by the same allogenic means outside forces or other. Autotrophic means by plants, and heterotrophic means by heterotrophs. So here we are, moving on to next page. Ecological succession. Succession would be much faster in areas that exist in the middle of a large continent. Okay, obviously it would be much faster in areas that exist in the middle of a large continent. All Tropicos, the seed belong to different spheres, would reach here much faster, and climax community would establish much faster. Which means it is basically saying that if this is a continent and this is its center, so from all the neighboring areas, seeds and popularcules belong to different spheres, which means from different species will reach here, and this will reach a climax first. So you can compare it to how a city is formed around a village, around many villages. How a city is formed, there is rapid influx from everywhere, from neighboring villages and towns, and from far away there is less influx, but there is influx from far away towns. So that is how a city develops. It develops much faster. Why? Than neighboring villages, because more and more people are coming in. So this is somewhat related to what is happening in center of a large continent. Moving on to Clement's theory of succession. There are 6 phases in Clement's theory of succession. Nutation means bare, so development of a bare site or disturbance. Migration, there is arrival of propagules. Excesses is the initial growth of vegetation. Competition, vegetation becomes more established and grows and spreads. Various species compete for space, light and nutrients. Then there is reaction. Autogenic changes affect the habitat, resulting in replacement of one climate community by another. And there is stabilization. So what is, according to Clements, what are the 6 stages? Nutation, which means, let's say this is a bare land, nothing is on it. Let's say propagules arrive, let's say seeds arrive. This is the second stage. This is N, this is M. Then we have E, which is, let's say small plants are growing. Then we have competition. There are some larger plants are fighting some smaller plants. Okay, there is competition between both. This is competition. Next we have reaction. Autogenic changes within the community. Let's say what has happened, only the tall trees have survived and the shorter trees have, and this eventually has led to climax community. Okay. Biogeochemical cycle. There's a water cycle, there's a nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle, and oxygen cycle. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus as elements and compounds make up of 97% of the mass of our bodies and more than 95% of all the mass of living organisms. That is true. That CHON and P, you can remember it as chinops. Chinops. Okay, you can write it as CHN also, or you can remember it as chop, whatever you want. Okay. So 95% of mass of all living organisms are made up of chinops. These elements and mineral nutrients are always in circulation, moving from non-living to living, then back to non-living components of the ecosystem in a more or less circular fashion. What is happening? They are always in circulation, from living to non-living, then back to non-living in a more or less circular fashion. This circular fashion is known as a biogeochemical cycle. Bio for living and geo for earth. Alright. There is a gaseous cycle, there is sedimentary cycle. What is happening in gaseous cycle? What is the reservoir, which means where is it mainly present? In the atmosphere and the ocean. What is for sedimentary cycle? It's in the earth's crust. Nutrient occurs as gas or vapor. Nutrients occurs as non-gaseous. Comparatively quick and fast, and comparatively slow. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen cycles are all gaseous cycles. Sedimentary cycles is phosphorus and sulfur. Water cycle. Continuous movement of water on earth is happening. Evaporation occurs from all water surfaces on earth, such as ocean, lakes, seas. Sublimation is when ice sheets and ice caps from north and south pole get converted into water vapor directly without converting to liquid. This also occurs from solid to vapor. Transpiration is the process by which water vapor is released into the atmosphere by plants through their stomatas. Condensation is water vapor present at a higher altitude condenses to form water droplets. These form fog. So let's just write the changes that are occurring. Okay, what is evaporation? Evaporation is, wait a second, you will see how it more or less contributes to the cycle. This is liquid to gas, sublimation is solid to gas, transpiration is also liquid to gas, condensation is gas to liquid. Right, we are seeing changes in these are all part of the water cycle. Precipitation is gas to liquid. Precipitation is basically rain. It includes rain, snow and hail. Surface runoff is water pours down, it runs over the surface of the earth. Alright. Infiltration. Some of the precipitated water moves deep into the soil. This then moves and increases the groundwater level. So this is infiltration. What is happening? Let's say this is water, rainfall is occurring. Now this is an area where there is groundwater. So this water is somehow seeping inside and increasing the groundwater level. Okay, increasing the groundwater level. Percolation is when some of the precipitated water flows through the soil and porous and fractured rock. Alright. Where is Earth's water? Fresh water is 2.5%. Other saline water, oceans is 96.5%. Fresh water from the 2.5%, only 1.2 is on the surface. 30% is groundwater, 68% is ice caps and glaciers. From the freshwater, surface freshwater, we have most of it in the atmosphere, living things, 0.5 in the rivers, 2.6 in swamps, 20% in lakes, and 69% in ground ice or permafrost. There's a diagram of the water cycle that I don't think I will have to explain. Moving on, you're going to the carbon cycle. Carbon occurs in various forms on Earth, which is true. Charcoal, diamond, and graphite are elemental forms of carbon. They are not compounds, they are elemental forms of carbon. Combined forms of carbon include carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and carbonate salts. All living organisms are made up of carbon containing molecules like proteins and nucleic acids. Short term, photosynthesis and respiration, uses of long term fossil fuels found by dead plants and animals contribute to carbon cycle. So this is an example of carbon cycle. We can see carbon is produced by decay, it is produced by respiration, it is produced by burning of fossil fuels. What is happening? It is going to the atmosphere. Photosynthesis is converting it back into oxygen, which is used by vegetation. Phytoplankton. In water there is always an oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange going on. Phytoplankton is using oxygen to convert into carbon dioxide. Sinking sediment, phytoplankton uses carbon dioxide to convert into oxygen. There is deep circulation, deep ocean. What is rock is forming, weathering and runoff. Coal, oil and gas are found under the soil. So that is more or less a cycle that you can understand. Sources: burning of fossil fuels, natural processes like respiration, we inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. Volcanic eruption gives large amount of CO2. Decay of organic matter also causes carbon dioxide production. And in other cases, if the decay is allowed for a long time, it forms crude oil. Sinks, photosynthesis. Oceans, 33% of carbon dioxide is taken by the ocean. When too much carbon dioxide is emitted, it leads to acidification. Dry ice formation at poles, climate change reduces this. Dry ice is found at poles when there is too much carbon in the atmosphere. Carbon cycle, short term, long term is accumulation of short term is photosynthesis, respiration, decomposition. Long term is accumulation of undecomposed matter in peaty layers of marshy soil or as insoluble carbons in the bottom sediments. Formation of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, natural gas. When they are burnt, carbon stored in them is released back to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. So the carbon cycle looks like this. There is green plants that makes organic. Let's start from here. Atmospheric CO2, photosynthesis, green plants use it. Decomposition and respiration both give CO2 again. When it gets eaten, it forms animal tissue. When it fossilizes, it forms fossil fuels. Animal tissues decomposes back into carbon dioxide, and respiration also gives out carbon dioxide. Fossil fuels, gas, petroleum, when burnt by combusted, give carbon dioxide. Nitrogen cycle. It is a very important nutrient needed for the survival of all living organisms. It is also the most abundant element in our atmosphere. Plants, animals cannot utilize atmospheric nitrogen. They can only use it in the form of ammonia, amino acids and nitrates. Its conversion happens through nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen fixation. It is a conversion of atmospheric nitrogen, which is inert form, which is non-reactive form. This cannot be used by plants. Alright, we must remember this cannot be used by plants. Non-reactive. Two reactive compounds available to living organisms. Biological, yes, number of bacteria, blue-green algae or nitrogen-fixing bacteria, rhizobium, which have symbiotic relationship with leguminous plants like peas and beans. Lighting formation of NOx, then nitric acid, chemical Haber's process and ammonia production. Nitrogen fixation, biological, could be done by free living nitrifying bacteria, aerobic azotobacter and anaerobic clostridium, or symbiotic nitrifying bacteria known as rhizobium or blue-green algae called Anabenna or nostoc. So we got 4 names here. Free living is azotobacter, and and which is aerobic, which is A, and anaerobic is Clostridium. We have Rhizobium. We have Anabaena and Nostoc. Anabaena and Nostoc. Nitrification. Nitrosomonas bacteria promote transformation of ammonia into nitrite. Alright. Nitrosomonas bacteria promotes the transformation of ammonia into nitrite. Nitrite is further transformed into nitrate by the bacteria Nitrobacter. Now nitrate is the main form that plants can use this. Nitrogen assimilation. Plants absorb nitrate ions and use them for making organic matter like amino acids, which are building blocks of proteins. Herbivorous animals convert plant proteins into animal proteins. Carnivorous animals synthesize proteins from their food. Ammonification. The process of decomposition of nitrogenous waste by purifying bacteria into ammonium compounds. From excretion and death of animals, nitrogen is returned into the soil. Denitrification. Free living soil bacteria such as Pseudomonas reduce nitrate ions of soil into gaseous nitrogen, which enters the atmosphere. Nitrogen cycle. Certain quantity of soil nitrates, being highly soluble in water, is lost to the system by being transported away from surface runoff. So what is happening? Some of the soil nitrates, as they are very soluble in water, are lost due to runoff. What is runoff? Basically it is nothing, but we can understand it. It is like when water is flowing over the soil, whatever it takes is runoff. Okay, whatever nutrients it is taking from the soil while flowing from above the soil is called runoff. So what is happening? Because soil nitrates are very soluble, they get transported away. Nitrogen cycle. There are Nitrosomonas, Nitrobacter, nitrogen octireductase, ammonium monoxidase. Nitrogen fixation is done by Azotobacter, Rhizobium, Nostoc. Ammonification is done by putrefying bacteria and fungi. Nitrification is again done by Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter. And denitrification is done by Pseudomonas. Alright. Nitrogen cycle we have understood. Phosphorus plays a central role in aquatic ecosystems and water quality. Phosphorus plays a central role in aquatic ecosystems and water quality. Unlike carbon and nitrogen, which come primarily from atmosphere, phosphorus occurs in large amounts as a mineral in phosphate rocks and enters cycles from erosion and mining activities. Phosphorus is very important in aquatic ecosystems and water quality. How does it enter the system? It is not in the atmosphere. It is occur in large amounts as minerals in phosphate rocks. Occurs in large amounts as minerals in phosphate rocks and enters the cycle only through erosion and mining. This is the nutrient considered to be the main cause of excessive growth of rooted and free-flowing microscopic plant in lakes. So phosphorus is causing the growth of these. The main storage for phosphorus is in the earth's crust. Phosphorus. On land, phosphorus is usually found in the form of phosphates. By weathering and erosion, phosphates enter rivers and streams, then transport them to the ocean. In the ocean, when the phosphorus accumulates on continental shelves, it forms insoluble deposits. After millions of years, the crust place rises from the seafloor and exposes the phosphates to land. After more time, weathering will release them from rock and cycle's geochemical phase begins. What is happening? Rock is weathering. Plants in water are taking up phosphorus. Plants it went to animal. Runoff after death. Phytoplankton is taking it. It is also getting sedimented. Then it goes into the earth's crust. Phosphorus cycle. Guano bird droppings on the coast of Ecuador contain phosphorus, which acts as a fertilizer. El Nino and La Nina related with geography. Upwelling at the coast of Ecuador and Peru leads to increased presence of fish, leading to more guano bird droppings. Alright. Normal year. Southeastern traderlies. Southeastern trades. So we are seeing what is happening. This is Australia, this is South America. What is happening? Warm water from the coast. Right. It travels half the globe and becomes warm. Cold water goes to South America and cold water is carried to Australia back. This also has cold water upwelling. More cold water from Antarctica is also coming. Cold current called the Humboldt current, that is what we need to remember. Upwelling leads to rise of nutrients, high number of fish available, and guano bird dropping fertilizers. This is El Nino. What happens? Australia remains relatively cool and South Africa gets hot. South America gets hot, sorry. South America gets hot. As it travels, it becomes hot. This stays for 6 months. Upwelling suppressed, Humboldt suppressed. Outcome: no fishing, no guano, loss of economic prosperity. This is El Nino, arrival of first child, close to Christmas. Phosphorus cycle. This is again an image that you can later understand on your own. Sulfur cycle. Reservoir, soil and sediments in organic and inorganic deposits form sulfates and sulfides and organic sulfur, released by weathering of rock, erosional runoff, decomposition of organic matter, and is carried to terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems in salt solution. Large sedimentary, however, enter atmosphere through volcanic eruptions, combustion of fossil fuel, from surface of oceans, from gases released by decomposition, forms hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide. Atmospheric hydrogen sulfide also gets oxidized into sulfur. What are the forms? Hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide. Atmospheric gets oxide into sulfur dioxide. Alright. Atmospheric sulfur dioxide is carried to the earth after being dissolved in rainwater as weak sulfuric acid. Sulfur is in the form of sulfates, is taken up by plants and incorporated through a series of metabolic processes into sulfur bearing amino acids. What is occurring? Sulfur in the form of sulfates is taken up by plants. So let's say this is a plant, it is taking up sulfur, it's taking up sulfates through a series of metabolic processes and it converts it into sulfur bearing amino acids. Sulfur bearing amino acids. For living organisms, it is carried back to the soil, to the bottom of ponds and lakes through excretion, decomposition of dead organic material. Now we look at the sulfur cycle. It is the same type of cycle. SO2 is being produced. Hydrogen sulfide from both land and volcanoes in the atmosphere. Dry deposition occurs directly. Wet deposition due to rain. It creates acid rain because very weak sulfates, acids fall into the ocean and the soil. Trees are organically decomposed and they give out sulfur as a byproduct. Sulfates in water are deposition occurs because of sulfates in water. Now we have oxygen cycle. 21% in the air is oxygen. Oxygen constitutes 65% of the mass of the human body and most of it is in the form of water. The steps involved in oxygen cycle are: all green plants during photosynthesis release oxygen back into the atmosphere as a byproduct. Aerobic organisms use free oxygen for respiration. Animals exhaust CO2 into the atmosphere, which is again used by plants during photosynthesis. Now oxygen is balanced within the atmosphere. We understand this is the one of the oldest cycles we will ever read, so I will not be explaining it right now. You can look at it on your own. Now let's go to homeostasis. An ecosystem maintains a biological equilibrium between different components. Obviously there must be some balance. It keeps on changing with time and is not static. feedback system, one component of the ecosystem keeps a check on the population of the other component. Alright. Homeostasis of an ecosystem. Ecosystem is a self-regulating system, obviously, that maintains equilibrium and steady state through feedback. To understand this, let's take an example of let's say there are fox and rabbits in a forest. Okay, there are 1,000 rabbits and there are 10 foxes. Okay, this is balanced. Now let's say some fox migrate to this area and it becomes 20 foxes. So they will be eating upon the rabbits more. So now you only have, let's say, 500 rabbits. If this increases further, it will reduce. Eventually what will happen, that the fox population will keep growing because it is getting food, and rabbits will almost get decimated. Now foxes will not find food, so fox population will start decimating. In this way there will be a back and forth in population. It will become X, Y, this will become A, B. It will keep changing unless a new balance is maintained, right? So that is how it ecosystem self-regulates itself. Alright, we can look at this diagram. What does it say? It is saying there is an input, forest ecosystem, output. There is feedback. Two types, positive and negative. Reduce change, acting on system, maintains balance and stability. Increases change, acting on the system. Positive feedback, let's say increase in population of organisms at different levels increases the population of organisms at a lower level. Okay, for example, when plant increases, it leads to increase in population of herbivore animals, and it increases population of frogs and birds which live among the plants. Negative feedback, increased population of insectivorous animals acts on herbivorous insect by process of predation. Gaia hypothesis. The Gaia hypothesis, it was given by British chemist James E. Lovelock and US biologist Lynn Margulis. It proposes the living organisms interact with their inorganic surrounding to form a synergistic and self-regulating complex system that helps maintain and perpetuate the conditions for life on the planet. So what is it saying? It is saying that while living organisms might have a self-regulating impact with other living organisms in the ecosystem, they also have a self-regulating relation with non-living things in the environment. So what else does the hypothesis say? Gaia is Greek mythology for goddess of earth, mother of all living things and sustain our life. Let's say earth cools, okay, life will adapt, temperature will rise, life will change. So that is how it works. Let's say there is a large water body in a ecosystem, so it sustains many species, some that drink it, some that use it to hunt aquatic animals that live in it. So let's say it starts shrinking, so the population of the place will also start to shrink. There will be effects. It will eventually regulate, the ecosystem will eventually regulate according to the balance of the organic and the inorganic, the living and the non-living. So it states that biosphere, atmosphere and hydrosphere along with evolution of life maintains homeostasis on earth. Homeo means same and stasis means balance. Global temperature, ozone, salinity, oxygen in atmosphere, habitability, existence of cybernetic feedback mechanism unconsciously operated by biota. Ocean salinity is fixed at 3.4% due to bacterial processes, even though there is constant deposition of salt by rivers. Daisy World is a mathematical model to prove this. Healthy ecosystems are base of wide range of economic, environmental and aesthetic goods and services. The products of ecosystem process are called ecosystem services. Researchers have put an average price tag of US $33 trillion per year on these fundamental ecosystem services. What could these services be? Provisioning services, which are materials that benefit people. Food, water, fiber, fuel. Regulating services that regulate the ecosystem, such as regulation of air quality, soil fertility, control of floods or crop pollination. Supporting services such as plants and animals with living species, allowing for diversity of species and maintaining genetic diversity, which is supporting other species. Cultural services like aesthetic and engineering inspiration, cultural identity, and spiritual well-being. So these are the four types of services: provisioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting. Regulating is air quality, climate, water runoff, erosion. Supporting is nutrient cycling, water cycling, soil formation, photosynthesis. Culture is ethical values, existence values, recreation, and ecotourism. Provisioning is whatever materials we are getting from the ecosystems: food, fiber, biomass, fuel, fresh water, natural medicines. India, cultural services, the idea of sacred growth. Using ecosystem services, we calculate the true value of ecosystems. For example, when we look at an afforestation program, we do not only look at benefit of timber but also other benefits. There are consequences of mixing capitalism with ecology, where we are assisting money value to ecology. This is example of a shallow ecology. Deep ecology will be preservation for preservation's sake, which means that why are we protecting this environment? Just for our benefit, just for the monetary value that we are gaining for it? No, these ecosystems should be protected just for the fact that they should be protected. They are worth protecting, that is why. So that is deep ecology and that is shallow ecology. The economics of ecosystems and biodiversity. Global initiative on making nature values visible. Alright. It is the principal objective to mainstream the value of biodiversity, economic ecosystem into decision making at all levels. What does it mean? It means we have to mainstream what? Biodiversity and ecosystem services into decision making, right? So basically we should keep these always. What is it saying? It is saying that you should always keep this in mind while making policies. Captures monetary valuation of ecosystem services and biodiversity for green domestic product. Concept was given by Pawan Sukhdev, received Tyler Prize, Nobel equivalent for environment in 2020. Global initiative UNEP, G8 Basic, Mexico. Looks into green accounting methodology to calculate green domestic product. Creates responsibilities and stakeholders for conservation of ecosystems and biodiversity. Part of UNEP Green Economy Initiative. Economic liability is assigned to forests on basis of services provided. So this is a book on the same. Payment of ecosystem services is a concept to provide financial incentive to individuals or communities for preservation, restoration, or enhancement of ecosystems and services they provide. Alright. It is a market-based approach that recognizes the value of ecosystem services such as clean water, carbon sequestration, and biodiversity conservation. Sequestration of carbon dioxide means removing carbon from the atmosphere or making it inert. So, mechanism: direct payments to landowners or communities, or through payments for environmental services such as carbon credits, water quality credits. So this is how we are asking to make payments. We are incentivizing. What are we doing here? Basically, we are incentivizing the protection of ecosystems and their biodiversity by simply put money. Ecological footprint. Ecological footprint accounts measures a population, demand for natural ecosystems, supply of resources and services. What is it? It is basically a population's demand for natural ecosystem supply. So basically any let's say there's a population in Calcutta, right, or a city like Mumbai. So whatever is needed for the population to survive, whatever is their demand of resources and services from ecosystems, is called ecological footprint. Alright. On demand side, measures an individual or population's demand based on plant-based food, fiber products, livestock, fish products, timber, and other forest products. Space for urban infrastructure, and forests to absorb the carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels. On supply side, a city's or nation's biocapacity, representing biological productive land and sea area, including forest lands, grazing lands, cropland, fishing grounds, and built-up land. So here we are seeing demand side. Whatever we need is demand side. So what is coming in demand side? Basically food products, which we get, right? Uh, Whatever natural products like wood, space, CO2 emission, CO2 absorption. Supply side, what do we have? Biocapacity. You have grazing lands, croplands, and other things. We will be beginning with slide number 90 after a break of 2 minutes.